I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work and are backed by science. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. We use only top-of-the-line formulations dosed for maximum results and the best flavoring systems available. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Welcome back to GuruTalk. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined by one of my favorite guests of all time. And people are always telling me, get him back, get him back. So he's back again. Milos Sarcev, welcome back to the show. They call us the Siskel and Ebert of GuruTalk.
Good to be back, Dave. I always told you I'm always available, especially for topics like this, if we're going to talk today about it. You posted something a couple of months ago. I was in Australia, and somebody right away forwarded me that video you were with John Romano and Greg Valentino, mentioning something about how I use insulin, and they disagree. So let me put it this way for everybody to hear. I have utmost respect for your knowledge. I think that you are one of the most knowledgeable people in the sport, and that you really understand physiology, contrary to some of the guys that we can mention later, right? Yeah. So you understand all the processes. One thing throughout the years that we didn't really agree in that previous insulin debate, you didn't really see my way, why I use it the way I do it. So I would like to touch that subject later, but at least both of us agree that insulin is potent anabolic hormone that has a usage in the bodybuilding.
Yes.
So when some gurus like George came out, you pray to God, forgive me forever, suggested that insulin, because it's so dangerous, it's so bad. I mean, for the love of God, okay, do we take anabolic steroids for the reason of anabolism, in different pathway? Yes. If you're in extreme sport and want to maximize our growth, we want to have every little edge.
Right.
So I want to ask you, when did you research insulin? Because I did it back in 93, and I used it in 93, experimented, and then finally for 94, I used it for the Olympia, and after that for all the other shows.
Milos, in 96, we had the Insulin Summit out in Dubai, in the Middle East, you and I, for a whole week together. Don't you remember that? That's when we solidified our theories, I think, together, actually. And then you went your way and I went my way. But we both were the first, I think, people really utilizing it in the sport. Now, I want to say one thing. The person you were talking about before is George Farah, had come out on Generation Iron and had said, he used insulin with his clients, and now he wants forgiveness from God because, he thinks it's too dangerous. And he basically, he didn't say it was dangerous in the sense it was going to cause any diseases. He felt that that sugar, for some reason he felt the need to compare the usage of insulin with the ingestion of a lot of sugar, which is not necessarily the case. You need to eat carbs when you're taking insulin, but you don't need to necessarily eat all sugar. So if you take a shot of insulin, you don't have to take an equivalent amount of sugar in, even though you might use that around workouts because that's like your regimen. But throughout the day, if you want to take an insulin shot in the morning, you don't have to take 200 grams of sugar with it. You can eat, a bowl of oatmeal if you want. So I think George doesn't understand necessarily how insulin works, but he chose, obviously, choosing not to use it on his clients anymore, and that's his own, prerogative. And we could talk about, whatever. He's obviously a good coach, but maybe his knowledge of science is not as astute as ours is. Now, the reason I call this the Siskel and Ebert of I guess GuruTalk is because we both have very strong opinions. I think we're both considered people that know what we're talking about, but sometimes we differ in our opinions. So Siskel and Ebert would watch a movie. So sometimes one would love it, one would hate it. And that's how it goes. And I have the utmost respect for you, and that's why I keep bringing you back, because I know you have knowledge about what you're doing. Now, the question is, why do people, and we've done these insulin guru talks before, but I want to use this one as a little bit more of an educational tool as opposed to just protocols. What is insulin doing in the body? We know that insulin shuttles amino acids and predominantly glucose into the cells. So the cells can't absorb sugar or carbohydrates without insulin being present. Now, when you eat an exorbitant amount of carbs throughout the day, putting growth hormone aside, your pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas which produce insulin, are taxed. In other words, they can only produce so much in the course of a day. And what normal person eats, 500, 600 grams of carbs a day? Jay Cutler used to eat 1,000 grams of carbs a day. There's no way your pancreas can keep up with that kind of rate of usage on a daily basis. And so what a lot of people find, and I see this in a lot of my clients, I don't know about you, I find that my clients, even the ones that aren't taking GH, are running high blood sugars, especially the fasting morning blood sugars, which really indicate the first, failure of the beta cells. They call it first phase. Insulin production seems to be down. So when you're sleeping at night, right before you wake up, your liver cranks out a ton of glucose, pushes it out from the glycogen storage. It can create it from amino acids so that your body is ready to go for the day. And a lot of times that massive surge of sugar into the blood cannot be met with enough insulin production, so you wake up with slightly high fasting blood sugars. Now, if you add GH on top of the equation, growth hormone makes you insulin resistant, as we know. It doesn't allow the insulin to work as well, so you might even see higher blood sugars. Now, I'll ask you, with your clients that you use, prior to you getting them on anything, do you notice that they're running high fasting morning blood sugars?
Yeah, well, let me just continue on what you said. I took this from Joe Rogan. He says, good conflict is always better than fake harmony. So the difference in opinions is, I always like criticism rather than compliments, because compliments can be fake. Too. When you say criticism, okay, it makes you think. So let's go step by step. First, I agree with you that, and I was saying this for 30 years, that GH itself is potentially diabetogenic. It created hyperglycemia. And I remember back in the day, even when I was with Balco Labs, I was telling some NFL superstars, they were taking just GH alone. Like, look, you are in danger of creating this, and then it happened. But to make long story short, let's put the insulin into the equation.
Well, Milos, you bring up a good point. I just want to stop you 1 second. I think the mistake a lot of people make, Milos, is when you first take that shot of GH, within the first hour or so, you get actually a drop in blood sugar, because what's happening is the GH is going to the liver and stimulating the liver to produce IGF-1. Insulin-like growth factor has a sugar reducing effect, so it drives blood glucose like insulin. That's why they call it insulin-like into the cells. So initially, you get that drop in blood sugar that some people say, "Oh wow, GH causing my blood sugar to drop." But long term, throughout the course of the day, it can result in elevated blood sugars, because it's working opposite of insulin. It's preventing insulin from doing its job, essentially.
It is. I wasn't talking about acute.
Right.
I was talking about chronic. What happens? Because let's put it this way: super famous, I can't mention the name, football players who are doing this for 10 years in a row and all this stuff. So look, you have to face the consequences later. This is a danger.
Yeah.
But let's go back now to insulin. If you are on a super high carb diet, of course, you mentioned Jay Cutler, many other people are doing it. If you do not take exogenous insulin, you have then only one chance that you force your beta cells, the pancreas, to produce as much. So this was right away potentially very dangerous. I did talk about this earlier, with some experts like Mauro Di Pasquale, John Berardi, Eric Serrano, Charles Polick, and many agree with me that yes, insulin would actually save you from becoming diabetic. The difference.
Say that again, Milos. Say that again, because people need to understand. Insulin does not make you diabetic. it could prevent you from becoming diabetic, and explain why again. Say it again. This was worth repeating.
Exactly. So for people to understand, if you have a frequent high elevation of glucose level in the blood, you're forcing your pancreas to release so much insulin from beta cells, and you're going to have a beta cells exhaustion, within a couple of years. And this is very common, and that's number one reason for type 2 diabetes that it actually happens.
Right.
And we know that a lot of bodybuilders were taking this, at least post-workout dumps of, super high carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, the first guy that I heard doing this was Charles Poliquin. Like back in 1993, I was hearing some of his studies, and he was taking 200 grams of immediately after the workout dextrose for his athlete. 200 grams. And initially, of course, I was complaining. Then we had a seminar together, and it's like, why on earth would you do such a thing? And he goes like, well, do you understand how much glycogen you burn through the intense workout, and how much capacity you have to replenish it right away? And then he showed me some studies that what the 2 hours of intense workout does. So like, yeah, I understand all that stuff, but don't you think that you can, if you distribute those carbs and you have them when you need them the most, which is my concept that you maybe don't agree with, I put the glucose when I think glucose is needed the most for muscle contractions. This is one aspect that I heard you say before that, Milos is feeding the insulin that he's taking. Yes, I suggest that people should take insulin, fast-acting insulin, 45 minutes before the workout. Okay, why 45 minutes? Because all those fast-acting, Humalog, Apidra, Novolog, have a 10 to 15 minutes onset, peak within 45 minutes to 75 minutes, strong action 2 hours. But what also has a dramatic, it's a greatest glucose infusion rate. So when you look at the peaks, when you compare the fast-acting to short-acting to either intermediate-acting, the peak is the highest for short-acting. How much? If you look at those scales, they go from 1 milligram per kilo per minute to the 7-8 milligrams per kilo per minute. Yeah. So for me, what I want to achieve hyper-anabolic state. I want to use as much glucose possible that I have and shove it into the muscle, because everything is upregulated. Insulin in the bloodstream, it's going to push everything out. When you train, blood is in the muscle. As you know, that hyperemia that happens right now, you and I have a 10-12% of blood in the muscles as we're talking and doing nothing. As soon as you train, 60-70% goes in the exact muscle that you're training. Right. So you saturate the nutrients, the blood with the nutrients that you want, pre-digested state, right? Insulin upregulate everything, protein synthesis, downregulate protein degradation, gene expression, everything that is related to muscle building. So for me, the only sense really that it makes to use insulin is immediately before workout, so it's going to be peaking as we are training, and then immediately after workout for glycogen repression for next so many hours.
Well, yeah, let me stop you. So let me just, so the people who are watching are not confused. So there's two types of insulin usage we're talking about here. The type of insulin usage where you're going to prevent yourself from becoming a diabetic would be the long-acting insulin like Lantus or Tresiba. That would ensure that your body has this long-acting, what we call basal insulin present, to kind of overcome the insulin resistance that you get from taking GH. Okay, that's going to prevent that long-term diabetic state. Okay, when you're on a lot of GH and you're running high fasting blood sugars. Milos is talking about a different type of insulin usage, which is what I would call your performance insulin usage. So there's the long-acting, which kind of prevents you from becoming diabetic, keeps blood sugars intact, and then the type that you would use around big infusions of carbohydrate meals. So whereas maybe I believe in taking a bigger carbohydrate meal in the morning with your breakfast, and I take a shot of insulin there, I might use a Humulin R, Humalog in the morning. And then usually I give it a second dose 5 to 6 hours later with the meal, with a later meal in the day. that's my usage. That's my performance. So those short-acting insulins are performance geared to drive nutrients into the muscle, okay, to get a hyperanabolic effect. Now, one thing you mentioned on a previous show, which I think is worth noting, is that insulin, while it really doesn't have an anabolic effect other than it's pushing nutrients into the cells, it does affect mTOR. And we know that mTOR is responsible for turning on the protein synthesis machinery. So it makes sense, at least to me, that post-workout, okay, would be the right time to do a big shot of insulin, or not big shot, a shot of insulin with an infusion of a lot of carbs and you know, whey isolate or whatever you want to use, you know, amino acids, branched chains, whatever you're going to use. It makes sense your protocol post-workout, but to me, intra-workout, you know, pre-workout, it doesn't seem like the cells are going to use what's in there already. It doesn't seem like they're just worried about contracting while you're in the gym training. They're not worried about repairing it. Now, if you were going to work out for 6 hours, I would agree with you, Milos. Your protocol would probably be great. As a matter of fact, you should probably work with cyclists, these guys who cycle 100 miles. You'd probably make them, you know, supermen, because they need to have that constant infusion of glucose because they're running out. But bodybuilders are not running out. I mean, come on, you do an hour workout, how much you're really burning through. I think post-workout, I would agree with your protocol. I think that I would have no problem with that. To me, pre-workout, I don't see any benefit of it. That's all.
Okay, so here, I mean, great. Now we're debating this. You don't see any benefits. What fuel does muscle use for muscle contraction?
It uses glucose.
Glucose.
How much glucose do you need in the muscle? Does your car run better when you have a full tank or a half a tank?
Oh, well, if you want to get to the destination, you're going to have probably enough gasoline.
Well, yeah, if you're driving from Florida to California, I agree with that. Not if you're driving to Tampa from Cape Coral.
No. It's just a workout. This is why I mentioned Charles Poliquin, because you know he was calling me a cunt.
Oh, he did? Barkley?
Cunt. How much glycogen do you burn? And then he says 200 grams. Like, oh my God. So you can have 200 grams of glucose delivered from the gut or manufactured in the body by gluconeogenesis or glycogen.
But why are the muscles depleted? If you're eating enough carbs throughout the day, you should have glycogen stores from eating everything up until you work out from the day before.
How much is glycogen normally there? And this is another thing that I want to tell you. So if you're going to ensure that you have so much glycogen, then you're going to have a frequent carbohydrates meal throughout the day that you're going to possibly overload your beta cells of pancreas. So now let me just finish my thought.
Okay.
First, mention about the long-acting Lantus, Levemir, Tresiba, whatever, for a basal insulin. Yeah, we all have that basal insulin. There's a pulsatile, and like every 9-10 minutes, it's released a little bit.
Yeah.
We all have that normal. So now I understand that by introducing GH, you're going to now, it's potentially diabetogenic, so let me counteract with the insulin. For me, I would much rather use that insulin before and right after the workout in a short burst. And then if I train twice a day, like most of the pro bodybuilders do it, we actually have 4 intakes. Right before the workout, immediately after the workout. Before the workout, for a reason of having an endless supply of glucose available for muscle contractions and instantly delivered into the muscle. As you know, every muscle contraction, as much as insulin, 2 independently, increases GLUT4 transporter to the muscle cell. So you can dump so much more. If you are burning, let's say, like Charles would say, 200 grams of glucose or glycogen, why would you be afraid to put that glucose right there from your dietary sources and have an insulin to drive that in? Because as you know, if you're not, we talk about this hyperkalemia. If you're in a dangerous state that you're gonna die from, heart is gonna stop, you're hyperkalemic, they rush you to the hospital immediately. They put you IV of insulin to take potassium out of the blood into the tissues. The same way, I'm putting an insulin into the blood to take that glucose, amino acids, ATP, everything out, and where it's going? only place it can go is the muscle, because you're training, you're doing all these muscle contractions.
Right.
So for me, I mean, this is all these years we have that difference that you don't find a sense. For me, is crystal clear like a day, like grass is green, sky is blue. Pre-workout makes perfect sense to do it, because you're gonna have a crazy volume workout, and higher the intensity, more the volume, more muscle contractions, more glucose uptake. Therefore, my type of training, beside this myofibril hypertrophy, I put sarcoplasmic, giant sets, drop sets, and all that stuff. So I push more and more blood into the muscle in the presence of insulin.